أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء سيد المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم إلى قيامة يوم الدين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، يا غريب كربلاء. رزقنا الله في الدنيا زيارتكم وشفاعتكم في الدنيا وفي القبر وفي الآخرة. أما بعد، يقول الله في محكم كتابه وقرآنه المجيد وقوله الحق: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قالت رسلهم أفي الله شك فاطر السماوات والأرض يدعوكم ليغفر لكم من ذنوبكم ويؤخركم إلى أجل مسمى. قالوا إن أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا تريدون أن تصدون عما كان يعبد آباؤنا فأتنا بسلطان مبين. آمنا بالله، صدق الله العلي العظيم. أفلح من يصلي على محمد وآل محمد. Another second salawat in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third of our loudest salawat in honor of the Imam of our time, Sahib al-Asri, was Zaman. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We started our conversation yesterday night with the discussion why exactly this series, what are the prevailing ideologies of today that inspired this series, as well as starting off after our introduction with the question of why exactly do we need religion. And there are 2 points from yesterday that I would like to clarify. As our dear Brother Jawad mentioned, there might have been some confusions or concerns. I readily admit that I am a fallible human being, and that's why, even if there were some complaints that, why are you picking such a slow reciter of Quran? It's better that you listen to the infallible than this fallible. Another second louder salawat. The first point that I want to clarify, inshallah, is a point that 2 people came up to me yesterday, and they said that this example was just a little bit confusing, and I don't want the third person to be Jeff Bezos himself. So it was the example with Jeff Bezos, and sometimes in the speed of the moment, I'll say the heat of the moment, but the speed of the moment, sometimes you just end up saying something and then, even while you're saying, you're saying. So I want to clarify that and possibly even modify that example. Yes. The example that we gave yesterday was something along the lines of, if you make a mistake in Amazon, something so minor, then will Jeff Bezos allow you to keep your job, right? And one objection, rightly so, was, this doesn't sound like Allah, like, just at the drop of a hat, he might go and punish you. So let's clarify a little bit on this point, right? This is a good opportunity for us to expound on what exactly do we believe. You see, as your status grows with Allah, your leeway with Allah lessens. And this is a concept in our religion called Hasanat al-Abrar, Sayyi'at al-Muqarrabin. What does this mean in so many Arabic jargon words? It means in English that what is considered good, that's hasanat of the abrar. What's abrar? Plural of bir. Right? The ayah that we just heard from Surah Al-Baqarah is laysa al-bir. Goodness is not only that you face for the east and the west, but the comprehensive picture of bir is the rest of the ayah. The good, what is considered good for the abrar, is sayyi'at for the muqarrabin. For those who are truly close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is not enough. Let's have an example. Hasanatul Abrar would be, for the likes of us, if I go and pray 5 times a day, that's very good for me, especially compared to, let's say, the masses of mankind. But now let's take the man who we were commemorating yesterday, that Imam Hussein alayhi salam left behind in Medina, Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. If I tell you that Rasulullah only prayed 5 times a day, initially that sounds great. But then you're like, wait, he prayed 5 times a day? I remember hearing back in my Sunday school days, in my childhood days, that even the nawafil were wajib on Rasulullah. I heard that Salatul Layl was wajib on him. I've heard even the hadith. Now, maybe some of us have heard the hadith. Maybe some of us, this might be a new hadith. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam says that, fine, even if a true Shia doesn't make all 11 rak'ahs of Salatul Layl, a true Shia, and this is something that you and I both need to, inshallah, work towards, a true Shia, he says, and don't let this be something that scares you, let this be something that inspires you. True Shia never misses with that final 1 rak'ah of Salatul Layl. He says a true Shia, my Shia, never misses that. So you're telling me that Rasulullah missed that? But a Shia who's hoping to be a Shia of Abu Abdullah Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq is able to go and do that, and he's able to surpass his Nabi? Impossible. Rasulullah, this would be something that we consider a slip up. It's something that it's taqseer on his record, that if a Muslim can do more than 5 times a day prayer, but he can't. You might say, oh, but he's busy, he's this and that. Doesn't matter. He's the role model that sets the example for all of us. If he has shortcomings, all of us have now an excuse. And we'll get to more of these kinds of arguments later when we come to the Nights of Prophet. But suffice it to say that the average level Muslim, yes, that's not the level that is expected from Allah when it comes to the Imams. That's not the level that Allah expects from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's not the level that Allah expects from you when you keep on progressing through the stages of Iman. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali. So, how can we modify this example? Yeah, even though the example was that, look, if you are going to try to make up your own belief system, and now you're going to use that instead of the perfect, divinely inspired system that has been kept intact from Adam, not only through Prophet Muhammad, but all the way up until Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. And now you're going to try to mix in a little bit of your own mirch and masala, your own spice and taste. How well are you going to do? We find the answer given in the rebuke, in the form of a rebuke towards Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In Surah Al-Qalam, Rasulullah is told, if you introduce into this religion, who is Rasulullah and who am I? If someone doesn't like me giving this example, let's let Allah tell Rasulullah himself. Allah says to Rasulullah, if you were to bring even a small change into the Quran, into this religion, we would take you by your right hand and cut off your life supplying vein, your jugular vein. This is the kind of threat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. Why? Because Rasulullah's status is up there. That's not the level of mistake that he'll hold us to account to. But as our level of understanding, our intellect grows, that's the level that Allah will keep us to account for. So that's what we initially meant the example of Jeff Bezos for. Today we will modify it to mean that those higher level of executives, employee number 1, 2, 3, who know what Mr. Bezos wants for the future of the company, if they start going and introducing their merchant masala, or they go and make a rookie level mistake, something that's completely unacceptable for their level, is that something that he's going to just say, okay, you know what, try again? Or is there going to be some kind of harsh consequence? There's going to be some kind of harsh consequence. Yes. The second thing that I would like to clarify, inshallah, before moving on to today's topic, after Allah, salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, is the point that I was making towards the end of my lecture, which was the reason why we need the religion. And I started to make that point, but then I saw the time and I'm like, yeah, also see what to get through. When are we going to get to this? And so I had to leave it a little bit unbaked. I knew that I had a couple nights left. So inshallah, tonight is where we will continue and solidify, hopefully, and establish that point. We mentioned that religion is nothing if not rights. Religion is a firm system of rights and responsibilities. Why can we not just depend on our fitrah? Our fitrah will get us to a certain point. That is something that Allah has inspired in us. It can inspire us to a certain level of ethics and morality. But past that, we need help. We need some level of a template that is, legislated for us, that tells us this is the red line, you don't cross this. Everything else is gradations of good, better, best. But what we also need to go and say is that some people don't even just rely on fitrah. Some allow the society of their times dictate what will be right and wrong for them. And we say to these kinds of people, and most of these people are innocent. It's not that they choose this as their lifestyle. They just go along with whatever is, we could say popular, whatever is being, put out into Hollywood, whatever is being told, this is what's right, this is, the curve of history, all of these, terminologies that are thrown out in the media. This is what many people take as their morality. And so we look to a couple of different examples. In Arabian history, we mentioned yesterday that there were people who were burying their baby girls alive. Now, of course, in hindsight, with Western ethics, Western morality, 21st century, of course, hindsight is always 2020. We can tell that that was wrong. But back at that time, why didn't the people of that time think that this is wrong? There were many people who would even argue with you that this is right. The kinds of arguments that they would give is, for example, a son will bring me economic boon and success, is an asset. Whereas a daughter, if as soon as she is, married into another family, she becomes that family's asset. And I lose. And I have to, for example, let's say pay for the wedding, and I have to raise her, and I have to this and that. This is why, unfortunately, but in that mentality, women's education was not something that was valued. This is an unfortunate, stain on the mass history of humankind. And alhamdulillah, now we do value that. That is one of our values. But if we were to go and say, society and the times will dictate to us what is right and wrong, then when you lived in those times, that's what's right. There is no objective morality. And to give another example, not even 50 years ago, in this country, there was a movie. I, as a computer science background, I already knew the story of Alan Turing. There was a major motion picture made by Hollywood where Benedict Cumberbatch starred as Alan Turing. He was a man who had, proclivities towards the same gender. 50 years ago, the UK, this country, psychologists, psychiatrists, they used to go and say this is, a disease, this is a problem. Today, what do we find? Completely, it has been revolutionized, it's been changed. Now it's good. So if we're going to go by the times, and if you existed in the 1940s, the 1950s, at the time of Alan Turing, many others who were persecuted by the law, and they were told that you need to go through this type of therapy, et cetera, et cetera. If we go even further back, why do we find that, perhaps scientists today have such a, an animosity towards religion, of keep religion out of science, keep religion out of politics. There should be a separation of church and state. One major reason may have been because of the transgressions of the Catholic Church and how much it persecuted scientists and how much it persecuted people who spoke out. And they said, no, you're playing with God. All we need to do is look to the likes of Galileo, who was persecuted by the church and kept in, imprisonment in his own house. Why? Because he went against the geocentric model of the solar system. He said, no, it's heliocentric according to my research and findings. He said, no, the Bible says something else. And so we're going to lock you up. So if we're going to go by the times, we don't have something that is consistent. And if we don't have something that's consistent, it doesn't really have any value. Because today, what's right, 20 years from now, I can't be sure that it'll be right anymore. Just like how people 20 years ago are now being considered wrong. I'll give you the example of currency. Currency, if one of our teachers in the house says, with the example of currency, if $20,000 today can go and buy you, $20,000 today, back when we were in the house, $20,000 could maybe buy you a car. Okay, maybe today it's, how much does the base model Tesla cost? 35,000, 37,000 before taxes? I don't know what Washington State's prices are. I'm going with Washington. So if it's $37,000 and tomorrow $37,000 doesn't even buy you a water, does this currency really have any value? Can you use it with confidence? No. You need to have something that persists. You need to have something that will translate over to tomorrow. You need to have something that you have confidence in will be here so that you can act on it the same as tomorrow. Otherwise, what's the point? And when you ask anybody, you ask the Christian, you ask the Jew, you ask the Hindu, you ask the atheist, you ask the agnostic. The agnostic. What is the most important thing? That we be a good person over here. That we treat our fellow man kindly, with respect, etc., etc. Okay, so then if this is the standard, then we need to have the highest of moral templates. It only follows logically. And in order for you to have the highest of moral templates, it needs to stretch farther than just the theoretical. Everything in theory sounds nice. It needs to be practical as well. So in practice, what is the best of the best moral templates that we can get? And the surefire way of how you can find that you have the best of moral templates is that you have role models. Role models who have already walked this path before you. And this is why each and every single religion has, for example, Buddhism, who have Siddhartha Gautama as the Buddha, as well as many other people who they admire. Right? And these are not people who, for example, sometimes people come and ask me, can we, take from the, teachings of, what's that? I'm sorry. On the member, everything, your memory just goes. But that one Roman emperor, I think his name is Marcus Aurelius. Stoicism by Marcus Aurelius. Can we take from him? Is he someone who Islam would approve of? You say, look, whatever he gives that doesn't outright contradict the ethos of Islam, go ahead, take from it. If it, is in line, if it enhances your life, go ahead. No one said no. What about Jesus? What about, Moses? What about Abraham? What about, And I'm talking about those teachings that we don't find in Islamic sources. We find maybe in the Bible, but it doesn't go against the Quran. Well, for those of you who were reading my little blurb of an introduction, know that I study a little bit of this, the Near Eastern texts. I go into the Hebrew of the Bible and the Koine Greek of the Bible and adjacent works of early Judaism and Christianity, right? And there are many things that validate the Quran, but they're not exactly things that the Quran speaks about. They're just things that the Quran touches on. Can we take those? Can we use those in our arguments? Yeah, sure, why not? If it doesn't contradict, why not? And so these role models that other religions present in front of us, how do they fare when we look at them from the lens, when we look at Jesus from the lens of Christianity, when we look at Moses from the lens of Judaism, when we look at Abraham also from the lens of Judaism, when we look at Noah and Lot and others who are in the Bible, how do they compare to their counterparts, number one, in Islam, number two, to our role models, Muhammad and Al Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And the answer is they don't. They don't hold a candle to our conception of Ahlul Bayt. Our Ahlul Bayt are something on a different level when it comes to portraying the religion, portraying ethics and morality, and the highest level of morality. And if you want an example, go to any Shia center in the 10 nights of Muḥarram and learn about Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You'll see the entirety of Islam displayed to you on one afternoon, on the afternoon of Ashura. That's all you need. There are so many people who we have heard of, who have come from all different walks of life to the path of Al Muhammad simply because of this man, Hussein ibn Ali, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. And yet, who is the God of Hussein ibn Ali? Tonight, inshallah, with the rest of the time that we have left, our goal will be to present a proof of the existence of God. But even the word proof, it's not something that our teachers in Hausa they necessarily like, because who are we, weak beings, to go and prove something as strong as the existence of God? This is something that we get from dua, from Imam Hussein alayhi salam himself. Before he leaves for Karbala, he has to go and change his Hajj into. And over there, Imam Hussein alayhi salam gives us a masterpiece of a dua. Of course, his son, Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, surviving the tragedy of Karbala, gives us an entire sahifa of du'as. But take some time and familiarize yourself. Those of you who have been to Hajj, maybe you have read it once or twice. Go back to that dua and look at the relationship of Imam Hussein alayhi salam with God. And he comes and says, what is there? How can I go and prove you with something that is weaker than you? Everything that is a sign towards you, that is an ayah towards you, is something that was created by you. And now I'm supposed to go and use this to go and prove you? It doesn't make sense. You are so evident that how could someone not realize you, right? And this is, really to summarize the argument of the Quran, not necessarily the Imams, because the Imams did have debates, but the view of the Quran is to focus more on Tawheed than on atheism. Why? Because as the ayah that I quoted at the very beginning, Surah Ibrahim, kind of says, on the tongues of one of the previous prophets, قالت رسولهم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قالت رسولهم أفي الله شك. There's doubt in Allah. فاطر السماوات والأرض, the originator of the skies and the earth. So you find that the vast majority of humankind has been on this path of theism. Yes? And this is something that even research, scientific research, published research, and I don't remember the name of the researcher, but all I can say is if you Google it, you'll find University of Oxford 2011, and you'll find exactly what I'm talking about, right? That human beings are predisposed to believing in a higher power. This is something that the Quran also hints towards. This is something that Islam, we believe in. This is a word that you may have heard of called the fitra. The fitra, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that kullu mawludin yuladu ala fitra. Every single newborn is born on this fitrah. Now, what the fitrah is, there's a little bit of conversation, there's debate on this. That's not our scope today. Regardless, what we do find is that the Quran is very clear that Allah is, إِنَّا هَدَيْنَاهُ السَّبِيلَ شَاكِرًا إِمَّا كَفُورًا. We have already guided him. If whether he's grateful or not is up to him. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already put that innate idea that you will believe in a God already within human. Now, the reason why we believe in a God, argument number one, very simply put, there's much more unpacking that we could do, but time is short, is that, look, no human being or board of ethicists, even today in the 21st century, is going to be able to give us a comprehensive moral template. This is something that has to come from a being higher than human being. If you ask the Indians, they'll give you, a certain level of, for example, dress etiquette. You ask the Americans, they'll give you a completely different type of dress etiquette. Even when it comes to Muslims, how should a Muslim dress? You go to each and every single different culture that Islam came to, and you'll have a different answer. The Egyptians, they dress different. The Turkish, they dress different. Indians, they dress different. Chinese dress different. Khalijis, they dress different. And Americans, they dress different. But all of them consider it modest. Look, as long as you go and fit the, Sharia guidelines of modesty, go ahead, have fun. You don't have to go and have a shalwar kameez. You don't have to go and have a kanzu or a dishtasha or a thobe. It's okay. There's many people who, as soon as you go and wear a business suit, why are you wearing the libas of the kuffar? Habibi, when you go and wear a turban, or when I go and wear a turban or a kufi and like this, who was also wearing this back in the day? Abu Jahl, Yazid. Also, now I shouldn't go and wear the clothes like that? This is not logic. Briefly, the argument that I want to take a look at, and there are many arguments, and they go through this in the college courses, they go through this in the Hawza, just very, very brief. One very strong, beautiful argument is known as the teleological argument. This is known in lay terms as the argument from design. And the Quran even brings ayat that point to it making the teleological argument. For example, one can go to Surah Al-Furqan and see that, in the khalq of samawat and ard, don't you see ayat in this? And, but there are ayat that show that the teleological argument is one that God himself, according to the Muslim viewpoint, the author is God, makes himself. So we will go through this argument today. Inshallah, tomorrow we will go with what the Quran spends a lot more time on, which is Tawheed. And so we start off by saying that we start off with cause and effect. That to every effect, there is a cause. Every effect has a cause. You can't have something and say that there is no cause behind this. Simple example, you and me. We had a cause, we had parents. But if you go back far enough, and our children ask us these questions, right? Well, what about before that? And before that? And before that? What then? What then? Okay, then you have grandparents, and then you have great-grandparents, and then you start getting tired of saying great, 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 great. Then what? You know the maqsad of their question. The reason why they're asking this question is, okay, who came first? This, in mathematics, is known as the problem of infinite regress. Infinite regress, if you keep on going back, you have to have a first mover. You have to have a first cause. If not, if there's always something before, if there's always a unit before, you can never, ever logically arrive at the present. If you just keep on going, look, what happened before this moment, a previous moment? There had to be a first moment in order to go and set the chain of effects into play. A visual example of this would be dominoes. What set this domino to fall? What set that domino to fall? Okay, eventually something had to fall in order for this one over here in front of my eyes to fall. Otherwise, you have a problem. If it just keeps on going back. Sometimes you're scrolling on Facebook or YouTube or TikTok and you find these, aesthetically pleasing domino videos. And you're like, okay, I have to rewind it. How long is this video? If it's an hour long, I hope this guy has something else to do in his life. Number two, I have something else to do in my time, hopefully as well, not just watch an hour-long video of dominoes. And you have to go and make a judgment of, how bored am I? But eventually you get to the beginning and you're like, okay, there is a first domino, alhamdulillah. Logically, there has to be something that sets it into motion. Otherwise, you cannot have motion, and otherwise you cannot arrive at the present moment. Okay? This requires a little bit more thought, but we don't have much more time to spend on this point of the argument. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali. There's second, louder. With this, now we will move on to the second part of our argument, which is the law of probability. Yes, we look at the argument of, look, how many chances are there that this could happen by pure chance versus not happening by chance, by happening by, for example, design. And so we see when we look at, for example, the factors that brought to life the human race or life on this planet. I'm sure it's no secret that there are billions, if not hundreds of billions, if not more, being spent by space agencies, by government agencies to try to find even a small sign of life on a different planet. And if that is found, it hits headlines everywhere. Oh my God, we found life on another planet. Whereas here, signs of life are not really, respected that much. Here, there's carnage and killing everywhere, and who cares? SubhanAllah, if we find it somewhere else, it has value. So we find in this argument of probability, there needs to be, factors that bring into life us. So, for example, in our atmosphere, those of you who have taken chemistry know that our atmosphere is made up of what percentage of oxygen? 21% of oxygen. Nitrogen is more in our atmosphere, and carbon dioxide is also more. Now you might think, well, why isn't oxygen more? You think that if the Quran says that everything has been made for, why isn't there more oxygen? The scientists will go and give us the answer that if there was even a little bit more oxygen, things would be more flammable. Even one matchstick that ignites would set many things on fire, and it wouldn't be an inhabitable planet. So we see that this is a fine-tuned atmosphere. Another thing that comes to mind is, for example, the asteroid belt right outside of Mars. Jupiter is probably the next biggest entity in our solar system, in our star system, after the sun. And this planet, this giant, attracts so many asteroids, so many foreign objects towards it. Some of them, of course, as you know, other planets are also orbiting. It's not just alone in the universe. Some of us, we think that we're the center of attention. Jupiter, maybe it thinks that too. But because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put, and this is of course our bias, we're going to say Allah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put this asteroid belt around Mars, we have, and because Jupiter has such a gravitational pull, it pulls so many asteroids that were headed towards Earth, away from Earth, towards its gravitational pull, ensuring life here on Earth. Had one of those asteroids come and hit us, we wouldn't be here to talk about it. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Loud salawat. The third loud salawat. Hopefully everyone was able to hear me, because I don't know when the mic fell off. I had to go back. Repeat all of that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali. Now let's turn our attention to the Big Bang. In the Big Bang, we see from none other than Stephen Hawking, who was one of the leading, voices of agnosticism and atheism. He has a quote, which I will read to you, just to go and further enhance the magnitude of this law of probability. He says about the rate of expansion of the universe. He says, of course, that singularity that was existing at the time of the Big Bang, that then expanded, the heat that was needed was trillions and trillions and trillions of degrees, in order to correctly expand the way that it did. Let's see what Dr. Hawking has to say about this. He says that if the rate of expansion 1 second after the Big Bang had been smaller by even 1 part in 100,000 million, the universe would have recollapsed before it reached its present size. How small is that number? Inshallah, we'll come to that very soon. Another second, loud salawat. Another third, loud salawat. He says, on the other hand, if it had been greater, if the rate of expansion had been greater by a part in 1 million, then the universe would have expanded too rapidly for stars and planets to form. Meaning, just the rate of expansion. Forget about all of the materials that were already present, because at a certain point in the expansion, helium and hydrogen also enter. And as they enter, this now starts to go and provide the building blocks for other forms of existence and life. Right? All of these came in at exactly the right time. So to illustrate how small this probability, this chance of just this factor of the rate of expansion, forget about the trillions of other factors that need to be factored in for our life to exist the way that it is today. That's how small is that? Let's have a visual representation from a mathematician, also from the University of Oxford, by the name of Roger Penrose. Penrose says that if you were to take the dart, if I were to give you a dart the size of a pin, and I give you a canvas, this is the dartboard now, the size of the universe, and most of the points that you could throw this dart will not even result in a universe. Some choice points will generate a universe, but it won't be the correct conditions for this universe. Only 1 point in this entire canvas that you have to hit, this small dart that you have to hit, only 1 of those will generate this universe that we live in, where even in this universe, our planet is the only one that is teeming with life. Can't even find a single planet. And how far have our rovers and our telescopes, and how far have they gone? And they've tried and tried and tried for decades now to look for life. They can't find anything. The conditions necessary for this universe, how small is that? He says that the chance of you hitting that. Now let's move on to the second part of this example. If you're with me, let's have a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. He says that the chance of this is how small? He says that if every single particle in the universe, how many particles does the average human being have in their body? 70 trillion. Okay, and these, just your stomach lining, it takes 7 days or something for your stomach lining to completely regenerate. How many cells are in the human body? That's 1 human body. He says if all of the particles, not just cells, particles in the universe, if next to each and every single one of those particles was a 0, it still wouldn't be enough zeros for you to comprehend how small the number is of the probability of this one factor of life happening. What is that number? It's so small, brothers and sisters, that I don't think there's books, hard drives large enough to go and capture this number. This number is 1 to the power of 10, to the power of 10, to the power of 120. That number is so infinitesimally small that mathematicians basically say that it's a 0% chance. It's a 0% chance. Why play around with words? But, and now look, who is the one who's saying this? Stephen Hawking. Dr. Hawking, you are the leading voice for a certain time of atheism. You can tell who's playing around with this mic. His name is Shaitan. Another 2 loud salawats. So this probably means that someone out there, someone who will watch this video or someone in the live audience is being convinced of the proof of it. Inshallah. This number is so small, but to the atheists, no, they don't deny it. They say, look, we agree that it's small. Stephen Hawking is one of our people. So we don't deny that it's small. But we say, this is the argument that I'm quoting from them, that if you give, nature, I always like to bring in nature, enough time, it will generate this, that after, trial and error, you will get this universe. And so that's what happened. We say, look, do you have an example? They bring the example of a lottery. And look, the probability is very small, but you can win. You say, look, first of all, chance has to exist within a closed system. And there is absolute randomness, the only way, and this is known by scientists, whether you're a biologist, whether you're a chemist, whether you're a physicist, when you go and create a controlled experiment, that is the only way that you can go and ensure 100% randomness. Outside, there's no such thing as 100%. There just isn't. This is known by the experts. Okay? When you have a closed system, then you can even have chance. And so people who intelligently designed the system of the lottery, they're the ones who created the system that then goes and determines who wins. It is because of a designed system that there can be what looks like randomness in the lottery, and therefore you can have a winner. To give this in the illustration of, a little bit of humor, we don't want to, bring jokes or humor into a proper majlis, but a person who was praying, God, please let me win the lottery. Please let me win the lottery. He keeps on praying. Of course, this goes against our theology because we don't believe that God can manifest physically or whatever. Work with me over here, okay? For the sake of the joke. God comes down and says, meet me halfway, at least buy a ticket. Yes? If you're not going to buy a ticket, how do you expect to win? This is what we mean by a closed system. So if you're not going to, look, in this system, you have to have the necessary parts, an environment for the chance to keep on happening. There has to be a system in which there's trial and error. You can't just have nothing and there's trial and error happening. What does that even mean? Does it make sense? So first of all, we reject this lottery argument. Second of all, we come and say that, look, we'll be generous to you and say that this 1 to the power of 10, to the power of 10, to the power of 123, even though this is 0, we'll call it out of generosity 1%. Every time, brothers and sisters, that there's 1% on the other side, what does that mean that there's on the other side? I remember once I was about to go the extraction of wisdom teeth. And, the doctors told me because of the placement of where the nerve was, and because x-rays are only 2D, and I don't want to bore you with the medical details, because they can't tell exactly where the nerve is, how close it is to the jaw or close to the actual tooth that they need to remove, there is a 70% chance of success of the procedure, 30% chance that they might hit a nerve. I asked them, what happens in that 30% chance if that manifests into reality, if you hit the nerve? They say, if we even tick the nerve, you will forever lose all feeling in your bottom lip. That's a 70% chance to a 30% chance. I told them, what's the harm if I keep the wisdom tooth in? And they go and tell me that, look, you're young right now, your teeth are still growing, they're going to need room, but it's going to be really, really painful. For the next 20 years, you'll be able to bear it. After that, it's going to be really, really painful to chew, and then we'll have no choice. We'll have to do it. It's just the way that the tooth is coming in. I say, okay, let's do it. Alhamdulillah, I have feeling in my lower lip, and the 70% chance. This is not a game of probability. We believe that we have a Lord who's looking at us. Okay, so this is not a game. We recite du'as. Allah Ta'ala is there to take care of us. This is how it happens. Okay. Sallu ala Muhammad. This is a 70 to 30% chance. Think I wasn't scared? Now, let me go and take this to our favorite example from yesterday, the aircraft. If I go and tell you, there's a 70% chance this flight will make it, a 30% chance it won't. Are you getting on that plane? For those of you who saw the Last Week Tonight segment with John Oliver about the Boeing 737 MAX, by the way, when I came from Detroit to Seattle a few days ago, I happened to fly on a 737 MAX. Alhamdulillah, I made it. I hope that it was a little bit higher than 70-30 chance, but let's go with the 70-30 chance. He went and asked, his reporters went and asked the people who worked at Boeing, would you fly on one of these aircrafts? No, absolutely not. I would not. This is, of course, from 2016, 17, 18, whenever the actual problems, and it was in the headlines. Now, of course, they've had some improvements. If you wouldn't fly on an aircraft, now let's go and flip it, where it's 30% chance of making it and 70% chance of crashing. Let's go back to the 1% chance that we gave to the atheists of this one factor of the expansion rate of the Big Bang, and 99% chance that it doesn't happen. We said that it's 1 to the power of 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 123, which means it's basically 0. Well, for the sake of an example, we're saying it's 1%. 99% chance is still 100% for all intents and purposes. If I tell you there's a 1% chance this flight is going to make it to Seattle, there's a 99% chance it won't. By show of hands in this Jama'ah, who is getting on that? And yet, brothers and sisters, you all are chuckling, you all are scoffing. This is the probability and the odds that the dear atheist, brother and sister, is playing with their akhirah each and every single day. We said this is one of the factors. At the beginning of my presentation, I said there are trillions upon trillions of factors. And there are more being discovered each and every single day. We gave the example of 2 or 3, Jupiter, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide. All of these are factors that are necessary for life to come, not just our life, others. And so this is why the Quran is so harsh when it speaks to the atheists. This is why the Prophet and the Imams, although their akhlaq was the height of akhlaq, argumentation was very harsh, because this is what the Muslim deems as the height of irresponsibility. How dare you go and play with your intellect in this way, where every single day you keep on saying that that 1 to the 10 to the 10 to the 123rd, multiply. Probability, of course, is multiplication. 1 over times 1 over times 1 over. You keep on multiplying that times trillions of factors. Want to side with that? Billahi shak. This is why Quran comes and says this is an illogical, irresponsible position to take. This is why we have much more respect for the agnostic person who says, look, I don't know. Maybe, I'm still not sure. The atheist who says definitely there isn't, those militant atheists who are coming after Islam, we say, look, this is not something that, we didn't have time, unfortunately, today to go into evolution. Maybe another time, maybe in one of the Q&As. But Really, brothers and sisters, the reason why the Quran doesn't spend that much time on proof for the existence of God is because it is innate. We are programmed to believe in God, and there are many, many, many proofs that we could go into. This was just one proof that this humble servant thought was fitting for this series. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, we say these things of chance and probability. And we hope that we are amongst the 99% chance that side with Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman when he comes. There were that many people who saw with their own eyes Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. There were those that saw Amir al-Mu'mineen. There were those that saw Fatima al-Zahra, Imam al-Hassan, Imam al-Hussein, and they saw the infallible lives that they led. They had no more arguments left. They knew that Islam is the truth. When Muslim Aqeel enters Kufa, know exactly what side to side on. And they side with him. Come to the nights of Dhul-Hijjah, of the few nights before the 9th, for Arafah, and ask Muslim Aqeel, how many followers do you have left? He has supporters like Mukhtar. Mukhtar is imprisoned. It has supporters, the likes of Maytham al-Tammar. He's also in prison. The few that are not in prison, Zuhair ibn Ayn, Muslim ibn Awsaja. These few Kufans who are left, they are not enough. And even they are under severe surveillance. It comes to the point where one night, Muslim ibn Aqeel in Masjid al-Kufa, where today he is buried, is leading Salat al-Jama'ah. And what started off with a full masjid, with a full Jama'ah, eventually by the end of the Jama'ah, he only has 2 people. In the middle of namaz, people were breaking their namaz. At one point, this city, Kufa, was ruled by the uncle of Muslim ibn Aqeel. Today, there are no more who are proud to say that they are lovers of Ali. Brothers and sisters, today we live in a society where it is easy to go and hold majalis of Abu Abdullah. It's easy to go and congregate in the masjid, and yet we go and take that for granted. In my home state, Dearborn, 15 minutes any which way, there's a masjid. As soon as you go 45 minutes, there aren't any more masajid. Yet even in our home community, people take the masajid for granted. Masajid are empty. Even on nights like these, you ask yourself, aren't these the Shia of Abu Abdullah, the ones who in a few nights will be crying out, Labbaik ya Hussein? Where are they when Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when his Safir, when Muslim is alone? And they're giving you excuses. Like, oh, well, I'm watching a majlis online. I'm watching a majlis of my favorite speaker. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And they'll come and give you these types of arguments. You say, fine. There are benefits also to coming to the mosque, to interacting with the community. And no one will tell you that more than these two, Muslim ibn Aqeel and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. That yes, our hearts are with you, but Imam Hussein alayhi salam needs your presence. He doesn't just need your hearts and your minds and your thoughts and prayers. That won't be enough. Sahib al-Zaman, when he rises, you think it'll be just enough for you to go and tweet and to Facebook post and to TikTok, say, oh yeah, that's the one who we've been saying all along. He needs your help. He doesn't need more PR. He'll do all of that himself. He'll have the people from all of these companies who have trained experience. Muslim ibn Aqeel on a night like this is left alone. He has no more supporters of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. Muslim is now going alone in the streets of Kufa. He doesn't know which door is a friend and which one is a foe, which one he can take refuge in and which one might surprise attack and kill him. He eventually is tired and takes refuge at a door. A woman, a Muslim woman in the city of Kufa, comes and sees him resting at the doorstep, and she says, "Oh man, I do not give you permission to come and rest over here." He says, "It's just for a few moments. I need some rest." She says, "Go back to your own home." He says, "My home is in Medina." She says, "Who are you?" He says, "I am Muslim ibn Aqil, and my master Hussein alayhi salam has sent me to see what is the support in Kufa." She says, "SubhanAllah, you are Muslim, my master, please come inside." She goes and gives him water. She gives him food and drink. She says, "My master, if there's anything else that I can do, but there's one thing that I must let you know, and that is that my son is a supporter of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. He is in the government of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, and so I will have to hide you, because when he comes home from work, I cannot let you be seen by him." Muslim stays hidden, and when that son comes home, he has some suspicions that there's someone in the house. He interrogates his mother. Eventually, she says, "I ask you to swear by Allah to not tell anyone." He says, "I swear by Allah, I will not tell anyone." She says, "Muslim is in this room." Brothers and sisters, this is a lesson for all of us. Sahib al-Zaman is the final shining lamp of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't have room for more slip-ups like this. We need to learn from our past and not let that become our future. If we know that someone has a tendency to slip up, to let these secrets become known, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, don't be surprised at the one who divulges your secret when you couldn't keep your own secret. This woman divulges the secret to her son, and he, in hopes of reward, goes to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad and says, "Muslim is here, Muslim is here." Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad sends the officer with an army to go and take one person captive. Muslim ibn Aqil is from that Banu Hashim. He fights valiantly, and every single time this man keeps on sending the message to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, "Send more people, send more army, send more soldiers." Eventually, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad sends a letter, and he says, "Why do you keep on asking me for people?" The commander responds saying, "You are sending me butchers and candlestick makers, whereas they have to fight a lion from the lions of Muhammad and Al Muhammad. These are not enough. Send more people, otherwise we will not be enough to capture him." Eventually, we know their tactics and how they killed Abu Fadl Abbas. They had to eventually slice off his right hand and his left hand. They had to go and resort to dirty tactics like this and corner Muslim and put him into a hole. Muslim is captured, and they take him to the palace of Ibn Ziyad. They ask him, "Do you have any final requests, O Muslim?" He says, "I have one request of you. One is that you go and pay off my debts." He goes and asks Umar ibn Sa'ad. He says, "We have some family connection. Please make sure that this is taken care of." He says, "As for your debts, I will take care of them." He says, "As for my second request, tell Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, there are no helpers over here in Kufa. Tell him not to come. Tell him to stay in Mecca. Tell him there is no helper, no friend of Hussein or Ali over here." They say, "As for this request, we will never let this reach the ears of Abu Abdullah." They take him to the roof of the palace of Kufa. They go, and the person, the Mal'un, hits him with one sword strike. It does nothing to Muslim. The second strike slices off the head of Muslim ibn Aqil. They throw the body of Muslim off of the palace, and they start dragging the body of Muslim ibn Aqil, and they hang it in the courtyards of Kufa. Eventually, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam on that day transforms his Hajj into Umrah, and there is one small girl over there by the name of Hamida, the daughter of Muslim. She is taken by Imam Hussein alayhi salam and sat on his lap. He says to Zainab, "Bring Hamida to me and seat her upon my lap." Hamida is brought, and she is put on the lap of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He starts caressing her, and the way that he does it, Hamida immediately recognizes this is the way that Imam Hussein alayhi salam consoles the orphans. She says, "Oh, Abu Abdullah, is there news of my father Muslim? Has something happened to him? Why are you patting my head the way that you pat an orphan's head?" He says, "Oh, Hamida, from this day forward, understand that my wives and your sisters, their mothers are like your mothers. I am like your father. You don't have to worry. All of your needs will be taken care of. Oh, Hamida, you don't have anything to worry about. There's one small girl who's watching this by the name of Sukaina. She says, Baba, rub my head as well, because soon I won't have a father. On the day of Ashura, there's a young girl who comes when Imam Hussein alayhi salam has said goodbye, his farewells to the entire family. She pulls and tugs at the abba of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And she says, Father, one last time, let me feel the effect of having a father, because these people, they will teach me new words like orphan and yatim. They will not let me know what a father is like. They won't give me any care. They will string me along with the older women from one city to another. Please, what Hamida got, give me that same rubbing of an orphan. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. We ask you by your holy name, Ya Allah, 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 Ya Allah. إلهي بفاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها اكشف عنا السوء يا الله. اللهم اغفر ذنوبنا، كفر عنا سيئاتنا، وتوفنا مع الأبرار مع محمد وآله الأطهار، وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والجالسين والحاضرين والشهداء والعلماء. نقرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.